Today we're starting a kind of once in a while activity that we're going to do called Convos with Cool Folks. And we're just going to invite people in that normally church people don't get to talk to, or people within the congregation that we just think are cool for some reason. And we're going to chat with them and talk about what's going on in their lives or what their stories are. I've already booked one of my really good friends who lives in St. Louis. His name's Abe, and I've brought him up in here several times, but he's an atheist. He considers himself a strong atheist, which means he has solid reasons for being an atheist. And he and I are good friends, and we chat all the time and are able to argue as friends. And so sometime in the spring, he's going to be coming, and we'll do a convo with that cool guy at that point. And if nothing else, you guys will see that it's okay to be friends with atheists. I have dreams of bringing in some of the leaders from the local mosque or some of the synagogues and just bringing them up here, and let's just talk about who we are and what we believe and the things that we have in common, and maybe talk about some of the things that we disagree with. Who knows how these things are going to shape up. But we're in the middle of a series right now called Free to Be, and we've been talking about life-controlling issues. So we've been talking about everything from pornography and gambling to being a misery martyr. If you don't know what a misery martyr is, there's an old joke that says, how many moms does it take to screw in a light bulb? No, that's okay, I'll just sit here in the dark. At least one person gets it. So that's a misery martyr. A misery martyr is a person who's miserable and does their best to make everyone around them miserable. And that's a life-controlling issue. Procrastination is a life-controlling issue. Overeating is a life-controlling issue. And so we're not slamming anybody. We're not trying to bring the fire down, anything like that. But we just believe people are meant to be free. People are meant to be in control of their lives, and people are meant to thrive. And some of these things that we're talking about keep people from thriving. And so I got a text or an email from Kaet Barron today. So Kaet Barron is the cool folk we're going to talk to today. And that's her husband, Adam. He's the one on the left, by the way. They both have mustaches, so I thought you might be confused. So Kaet texted me and said that she had a life-controlling issue in her life in the past that she thinks maybe churches don't talk about too much. And it's funny, I was sharing with a friend today what Kaet was going to be talking about, and he said, yes, this is something churches need to talk about. So Kaet, would you come join me? Everybody give Kaet a round of applause.
I feel like the pressure's on now. I have to be cool.
No, you don't.
Okay.
No, you'll be fine.
Okay.
Okay. So first off, just tell us who you are. You were Kentucky School Counselor of the Year a couple years back, right?
Yeah,
And
my reign has ended. I had to give back my crown.
did you?
But it was 2016. I am an elementary school counselor in Bullitt County. And 2016, I won Elementary School Counselor of the Year and then Overall School Counselor of the Year, and got invited to the White House for Michelle Obama's last event as First Lady. And if you watch her video, I'm right there in the back, like smelling her hair and just trying to soak it all in.
You guys are like besties now, right?
We are. I mean, we're on each other's Christmas card list.
Text each other, tweet, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So can we talk about your job and the job situation that just happened over the summer, or would you prefer not to?
No, we can.
So I think at your school, they were having some downsizing, some cutbacks, and that sort of thing, and it looked like your job was in pretty serious jeopardy.
Yeah, it definitely was. There was an old staffing plan in Bullitt County that stated if a school dropped below 350 students, if an elementary school did, that the counselor was cut to halftime.
Right. And halftime doesn't cut it for you guys. And so I know you were shopping around, looking elsewhere. And I remember we were back in one of those seats, and we prayed one Sunday morning together that just God would somehow save this job. And it was the next day. It was real close.
Very
soon after that I got a call. Tell us what happened. So there was a suicidal student involved, if I remember right.
There was. Confidentiality, can't give too many details.
Okay, forget what I just said and strike that from the video.
No, that's okay. We just had a crazy week at my school. We had a student that was in crisis. We had some parents that were having some crisis, not knowing how to help their students. And there was just a lot going on. And so there was a meeting held, and it was voted to save my job, to find the funds to save my job. I was very, very happy about that. But unfortunately, it also meant that the funding they were going to use to save my job meant that we were losing additional staff at our school, like instructional assistants and things like that. And actually, the part of this story you don't know is that about 3 weeks ago, randomly at a board meeting, a board member presented and said, I think we need to eliminate that portion of the staffing plan and make elementary school counselors full-time. And so they voted and it passed. So my job is now full-time without using any of the funding from the
Great.
school. So all the jobs, the instructional aides and everything are saved.
You know, people wonder if God answers prayer, and I don't. God's just creative. You know, I don't think God is the kind that says, "Yeah, I'll give Kate her job because she prayed, and all the rest of you can just." He takes care of people.
Well, and it was really hard because, you know, I was praying to have my job saved because I absolutely love it, but I knew if they used that funding, then we would lose our instructional assistants who provide one-on-one tutoring for kids who are below grade level, and so it was just this torment of, yes, I want my job saved, but what about these other jobs and the other services they provide to their students? And then I was going on all of these interviews, some of which I was going to these schools that I was like, okay, I could potentially see myself working here. And I was getting turned down on all of them. And there was a part of me that was like, I'm school counselor of the year. Like, what is going on? HL says I'm a cool person. Why am I not getting a job? And it all just works out for a reason.
Yeah, very good. So you probably, just as a line of work, you deal with life-controlling issues in students constantly. How do you keep from taking that home all the time?
Broadway musicals in the car.
Okay.
It's just one of those things where it sounds cruel, but you just have to shut it off. And sometimes you can and sometimes you can't. I mean, sometimes when I'm at home, I am still communicating with parents. I am still thinking about those students and the stuff that they're coming across. I mean, even during the summer, right now, I've really gotten interested in how trauma affects the brain. So it's looking at all of that and knowing my kids and thinking, okay, I can see this kiddo here in this scenario. How can I incorporate that? So it's hard to go home and be focused on, oh my gosh, this situation, I don't know what to do. So instead, being proactive and thinking, what can I do? How can I go back and change the things that I can change, as versus focusing on these things that just absolutely stink.
See, my thought is this, is that as followers of Jesus, we should all carry some of that with us, that we're surrounded by people with life-controlling issues all the time, every day. We're surrounded by people in trauma, or that have experienced trauma, people in crises, people who have lost jobs. And I think one of the greatest challenges, in my opinion, of being a Christian is carrying the weight of that. And it's really interesting that when Jesus talks about going to heaven versus going to hell, or you know, the eternity for people, when he talks about people who go into heaven, he says, enter into my rest. And I would think with your job that it would be a challenge to rest knowing all the issues all the time. So give us, I mean, and we did not script this at all. She has no idea what's gonna come out of my mouth. So if it's a question that's just weird, you can just say, hey, you're a weirdo, stop. But what are some tips to see the trouble around you and yet not let it destroy you? Does that make sense?
It does.
I should have texted you some questions, huh?
You should have, yes. I think it's all in how you look at things. I mean, it's like art. Some people will look at a piece of art and just say, oh, that looks like someone melted crayons all over that picture. But some people will look at it and see that there's creativity and there's color. So it's all in how you look at it. So you can have these situations. I mean, there are days when I come home and I'm just like, Adam, don't talk to me. Like, take the kids. Can I say, give me a glass of wine in church?
You can say what you want.
Okay,
it's your
give me a glass of
conversation.
wine. Like, I just need some time. There are moments where you wish you were like a cell phone, where you could just plug yourself in and emotionally recharge. I try to do things that are fun for me, like playing with my girls, or making my husband take me out to eat, or just doing something to turn my brain off.
Right.
But it's also in how you look at it. So you can look at these situations and just let it drain you, or you just, what can I do?
Right.
Okay, what can I do to make this better, or what can I do to change it? What am I going to do tomorrow?
Yeah.
Today is done. I've gone home. What can I do tomorrow? And
Right.
then just setting it in place to be proactive and to take some sort of action, whether that's small or big.
That's something we've talked about in here a lot, is that you can't help everybody, but you can help some, and you ought to be helping some. And so taking small action is, what am I going to do today? And then you also mentioned self-care, is just the idea you got to take care of yourself. You can just kill yourself by trying to help others, and that doesn't help anybody. And so, important points. Let's jump to the gist of why you're up here talking today in the email you sent me. You mentioned a life-controlling issue that you've experienced and dealt with in your life. Why don't you just tell us your story or talk about that for a minute?
So I, for a very long time, and probably still to some extent, because life-controlling issues don't just go away, had an eating disorder. There wasn't like a light switch of when it started. I remember not wanting to go to kindergarten because my teacher was fat, and I didn't want a fat teacher. So there was always, that I was 5. Obviously, my opinions have changed. But I remember there always being some sort of preoccupation with weight and with food. In high school, I would take the money my parents had given me for lunch and not buy lunch. And then it got very bad. When I graduated college, I spent about a week at home for Christmas, and then I moved up to Philadelphia all by myself for a job. I was a camp director. I lived on 600 acres all by myself. I didn't know anybody. And while I was there, things just sort of came to a head. And the eating disorder resulted in a lot of poor choices, and in 2006, I went to rehab.
So what are we talking about here? When you say you had an eating disorder, what on a day-to-day basis, what did that look like?
I went back and forth. A lot of times it's portrayed as you either have anorexia or you have bulimia, and that's not necessarily the case. A lot of times it's mixed in. I was more, in high school, I was more anorexic.
Why don't you explain those terms in case anybody's unclear?
So anorexia is when you deprive your body of the nutrients because you eat, but you limit your calories severely. So in high school, they stress the importance of family dinner, and that is so incredibly important because I think that saved me in high school. I wouldn't eat all day, but my family had dinner together every night. So there was no way I could avoid eating dinner. So that would be the one thing that I ate that day. So anorexia is when you just deprive your body of those nutrients. You cut back severely on what you're eating. Sometimes you over-exercise. And then bulimia is when you will go long periods of time without eating and then just sort of binge uncontrollably and then vomit.
Mm-hmm. So your story.
So like with all life-controlling issues, it wasn't about the food. It took me a long time to realize that. The food was something that I could control. The binging and the purging was something that I could control. But for me, it was a lot of other things. It was a lot of anxiety. I think that it really started to sink in when I was in middle and high school. Those were not fun experiences for me. There is a reason why I am working at an elementary school, and that's because you could not pay me to go back to middle and high school. And I think that I felt very insecure with who I was. I did not withstand peer pressure very well. I think I put a lot of that pressure on myself, trying to fit in, but then not wanting to fit in. And I internalized a lot of that. I have also been a perfectionist. I like to do things well. I like to do them not even so much well. I like to be the best. And so when I was not, that was a very hard struggle for me. And so I graduated college early, came home for like a week at Christmas time, and then moved up to Philadelphia. And that was 2003. So this was a time when the economy wasn't doing so hot. And, I was being told, that's so amazing. You have a job. You have one all lined up. And I got up there, and it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. And I wasn't happy up there. I thought this was what I wanted to do, and there were moments that I loved, but it wasn't right for me. And with my personality, I couldn't just call home and say, I made a mistake. I was going to fight through it, and I was going to make it enjoyable, and I was just going to go gung-ho with it. But the one thing I could control is my eating. And then being upset with myself for not being strong enough to say, wait a minute, I need help, this isn't okay, I'm not doing all right, would just result in that cycle. I'd wake up and I'd say, okay, today's it, I'm not gonna do it, I'm gonna, I'm gonna eat healthy, and I'm not gonna binge and purge. And then ultimately I would fail, and I would binge and purge, and then it would just start that self-deprecating cycle over and over again.
So I noticed a couple things you mentioned is the topic of control and the topic of anxiety. And when we're talking about life-controlling issues, I think it's so important that we mention that the issue is not the issue. If gambling is the issue, gambling is not the issue. You're looking to satisfy something else that's empty or that you're deprived of through an activity. And through all these things, we've had a slide on the screen over the last few weeks with all these different types of life-controlling issues. And if I just ask you the question, what's your issue, most of the people in this room can pinpoint a couple things in their life. And I think what Kate's saying, and really what we're wanting to bring out in this entire series, and Molly and Joseph have been helping with this, and you'll hear Molly's story next week. But what we're trying to say is that the stuff is not what we're trying to address. We're trying to address the stuff under the stuff. And so it sounds like anxiety, control, not feeling like you fit with your peers the way you wanted to, wanting to be perfect, and so forth, that those were the core issues. So, and you said today you're in a much better place, that it's always there, but you're in a much better place. Tell us a little bit about that transition.
I mean, it has taken a very, very long time. For a long time, I didn't think that I had anxiety. In high school, I knew that I was depressed, but I thought, it's high school, you're supposed to be depressed. And the depression followed me, and I went and I saw a therapist, and I was on medication for depression, and it helped, but there was still some of that stuff going on. I did go to rehab I left January 4th of 2006. When I came back again, I was like, I'm never doing this again. I'm cured. This is it. And I did very well for a while, but there have been times where I have faltered. I continue to go to therapy. I don't go consistently right now, but there have been moments in my life where I have said, I need to check in with stuff. I need to go start seeing a therapist. I need to go back and look at my meal plan, look at those supports, and figure out how to get myself back on track so I don't start spiraling again. The anxiety never really came into play, or it never dawned on me that that's my main issue. After I had my first daughter, I was having these horrendous nightmares. One of them was that we were walking along the beach and a wave came and just swept her off to sea. And then that was it. Like, I could not go back to sleep. I had a dream that I took her to the zoo and she fell asleep, so I left her in the bathroom stall. And then when I came back, CPS was there. And I was just having these dreams where I absolutely could not go back to sleep. And I went and saw my doctor, and she diagnosed it as postpartum depression. And she said that a lot of times people do not get help for postpartum depression because they think it's, I don't want to hold my baby, I can't deal. And that a lot of times it shows itself as increased anxiety. So she took me off all the depression pills and put me on anxiety medication. And it was like, yes. Like, if my prescription runs out, you can tell. It has just, and it's an ongoing thing. I go back for checkups. They mess with the medication. Like, it's never over. It's not something that gets fixed and you move on. Even though I don't struggle with the food and I feel fine when I eat and I'll eat whatever I want, it's not totally gone because the anxiety is never going to be gone. I do think that as I've grown up, I've become much more comfortable with who I am and being able to say, like, this is who I am, and if you don't like it, sorry, this is who I am. I think a lot of the things that made me feel uncomfortable when I was in middle and high school are the things that I have learned that make me a special individual now as an adult.
You know, and that's beautiful and exciting for me to hear. And I think it takes guts to sit up in front of this many people and an online audience and say, I've been in therapy, I've taken medication. If I'm off my meds, I'm a different person and so forth. And what you're going to hear at Daylight Church is that we believe God is a healer. I believe that. I've seen miraculous things that are unexplainable. But I also believe that God is quite scientific. I think he has empowered doctors and psychiatrists and medicine, and we're an advocate of all of it. And one of the things you'll hear in this series multiple times, and that I mentioned a couple weeks ago, is that it's okay not to be okay. That's something so important that everybody hears, is that if you have a life-controlling issue, just calm down. It's okay. Everybody does. So that's the first thing. But then what's not okay is to not get help when you're not okay. And so I love what you've said as far as you know, you reached out to doctors, you reached out to specialists, and they have tweaked it and messed with it, and it's ongoing, and that's okay. But you're seeking help and in a better place now. What's life like now?
I mean,
Seems like you've touched on it, but
life is good now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I got to a place about a year ago. I was in September. I joined a gym. Mm-hmm. And so for the first time in my life, I'm really like working out consistently, and I have a trainer who goes over my food with me. Mm-hmm. He's aware of my past issues. And I was really worried at first when I started going to the gym, because once I got over the fact that it was physically painful to work out, I really started to enjoy it. Mm-hmm. And I had this real concern that, you know, it was going to bring up a lot of old feelings with my parents and my family who had been there through all of the craziness. But I think, and we've talked about it, I think that they've seen that it is different this time. I am able to say, no, I'm not going to go to the gym today. I am able to, at night after the girls go to bed, get out my chocolate stash and not feel guilty about it. Mm-hmm. And honestly, like, I think that it has helped me appreciate my body more, seeing how it has changed with hard work that makes you feel good as versus hurling over a toilet and just feeling like I am disgusting. Mm-hmm.
I think I have a ton of thoughts all the time. I just want to talk and talk and talk, and you guys have learned that about me. I think there's always a substitute for something that is healthy, that is unhealthy. And so in this case, what we're talking about is eating decent, not eating 80-20. 80% of the time you eat good, 20% you eat what you want, hitting the gym. And it's hard work. Part of it is no fun versus trying to do the quick fix, the binging and purging, mm-hmm. saying, well, if I'll just throw up a lot, then I'll be thin. Mm-hmm. But you're decaying at that point. And a lot of times with these life-controlling issues, what we're doing is we're trying to fix something in a way that is unhealthy. And so, again, getting back to the root cause, I think my wife would tell you, she had to take the baby out, she's gone, but my wife would tell you that food was one of her biggest obstacles in life, is just the power of food. Food is very powerful, and when we talk about eating disorders, we're not necessarily only talking about anorexia and bulimia, we're just talking about lack of control or overeating or eating just crap all the time. What are some thoughts on just getting control over food?
I'm not an expert.
Okay, that's fine.
It's a process. Mm-hmm. I think the thing to me, when I look back at how I was for the year before I went to rehab, it's unrecognizable. Mm-hmm. And it truly was amazing to see how much my mind worked once I started feeding it. Mm-hmm. Once I was giving it what it needed, it's like I don't want to say it all became crystal clear, But that person I was right before I went to rehab, I don't know that person.
Let me ask you for clarity on that. So when you say when you started giving your mind what it needed, are you talking about the medication and the therapy, or are you talking specifically about nutrition?
Just
or the
nutrition
whole,
and
the whole
food.
package? Okay,
Yeah.
nutrition and food.
Because rehab for eating disorder is, well, I'm sure rehab for anybody is not fun, but your meals are all monitored, calories are counted out, they are timed, and you have so long to complete your entire meal. And if you don't, then I don't want to say you're penalized, but you don't get special treatment. So like if you don't finish your meal, then you can't walk up the stairs. Which for people with eating disorder and you're not allowed to exercise, you're sort of looking for anything you can do. Because sometimes, I mean, we had girls there that were giving their body food for the first time in literally years. You're looking for anything to help burn off a little bit of that. I know at one point they upped my snacks, and it was, I mean, at the time I felt like it was the hardest thing in the world for me to be able to eat that graham cracker with peanut butter. And to this day, I still sometimes I'm like, that's too much peanut butter, because that was like their thing. They're like, you need to gain more weight. Eat peanut butter. Here's 3 tablespoons of peanut butter. I was like, at least put some chocolate on it. Like, give me a peanut butter M&M.
Right.
That I can deal with. We had peanut butter on bananas, peanut butter on apple. I mean, but
Sounds like paradise to me.
But so, once I got that nutrition in me, it's like the fog slowly started lifting. And then I got there and I was looking around at all of these other girls who were in the same situation as me. And some of them I bonded with and felt like I could communicate with them. And some of them were still in the crux of their eating disorder. And it was just like, oh my gosh, do you not realize how crazy you appear right now? Like, do you not realize what you're doing to your family? And when I hadn't been giving my body the nutrients, I was right there with them, doing crazy things and I took $4,000 from my parents to buy a car. And I was like, oh, I'll send you a check in the mail. I think Dad is still waiting on that check. But when I decided that I needed to go to rehab, that was part of it, is that we were like, we're selling this car. This car was bought not in the right way, and it's sort of a symbol of how crazy and messed up your mind was. So I sold it to help pay for rehab. And my parents have always been very good about, you're not invested unless you're invested. So I had to pay for rehab. So it was like, I'm not going to spend at the time I was 23 years old working as a social worker. So I'm not going to waste this opportunity that I have. Once I got there and my brain started working, it was like, I'm not going to waste this. Girls would come up to you and be like, this is how you unlock the bathroom. This is how you get around this. And I was like, this is my one shot. Like, I'm not wasting this. And that's where my perfectionism actually came in very, very handy, because out of all of the girls that I keep in touch with from rehab, I'm the only one who hasn't gone back. And some have not. Some are not here today.
Right. More thoughts, shockingly. One thing you hinted at is that life-controlling issues, whether it's eating disorders or something else, they perpetuate the problem. So what you were looking for was a cure for anxiety, a cure for not feeling connected with your peers. I suspect from what you've shared that the eating disorder isolated you even further. So you're looking for an answer, and it isolates you even further. And all these life-controlling issues that we talk about, that's exactly what they do. We think they're going to give us something positive. So I'll throw out pornography. Pornography is a really common issue that many people have addiction for. And you're looking for a chemical cocktail that makes you feel good. You're looking for a substitute for intimacy. And what happens is it just steals your ability to perform. It steals your ability to feel anything. It steals from you. And all of these life-controlling issues that we're talking about, they offer something that it's a carrot on a string. It's out there, and you'll never actually get it out of those things. And you just find as you keep reaching and keep reaching that you just keep going further and further and further, downhill. But then the second thing that you mentioned that I think is really important is that you said like the phrase, when I went to rehab, 2 or 3 or 4 different times. And one of the chief messages of Christianity is that of what they call repentance. And repentance is not stopping doing bad stuff. Repentance is a turning. It's a turning towards God and towards the life of God and turning away from the stuff that isn't that. And so the sentence, I went to rehab, is kind of something we should all say. If we're talking about rehab as a clinic, that's one thing. But if we're talking about rehab as in just a transfer of life away from something and towards something, that's kind of the message of Jesus, is that you can turn away from stuff that eats you, that carrot on the string, that you're always reaching for, that never seems to satisfy. You can turn away from those towards something that's really human thriving and really good. And those are my thoughts. You grabbed the mic and were about to say something. Did I steal your idea?
Yeah, and I mean, it's not just, you can't just say like, oh, I'm going to go to rehab, or oh, I'm going to stop doing this, or oh, I'm going to eat right. There's a reason why I was doing those things. Mm-hmm. And when I went to rehab and when I was really doing the therapy, it slowly started dawning on me why I was doing those things. And so once I was able to recognize those things and recognize those aspects of myself that were leading me to sort of reach out and grasp onto this eating disorder, is when I was able to change it. Mm-hmm. And it's an ongoing process. I mean, I, to this day, am still learning about myself and why I operate in the way that I operate, and sort of looking at how I respond to situations and how can I respond differently. I mean, you can't just say, oh, I'm going to stop doing this. Mm-hmm. You have to look at, why am I doing this and how can I change that? And then the rest of it will slowly fall into place.
Yep. So to sum up, it sounds like what you're saying is that food and control over food isn't the target when it comes to gaining control over food. Mm-hmm. You're actually wanting to figure out, why is it that I'm doing this, and make adjustments. It's almost like finding your peace and your serenity mm-hmm. from elsewhere, mm-hmm. right? Do you have any thoughts or comments on that, or we just move on?
No, I agree with that.
Okay, great, fantastic. So we've just got a few minutes left. I have a sermon prepped, but I'm not going to do it. I'll save it for later. But we've got a few minutes left, and so I have one thing, Kate, if you could help us out with. You have an opportunity. Statistically, there's people in the room that deal with what you've dealt with. That's just a statistical reality. And then secondly, this will be online under the topic of eating disorders, so people will find it that are specifically looking for information about eating disorders. Take a minute to talk to take a minute to talk to the 20-year-old you. What would you say to Kate back then?
Just eat it and don't puke it up. I don't know. A couple of times in the past, I've done forums where I talk on eating disorders, and it breaks my heart. I remember one time I had a dad come up to me and say, what was it? What was it about you that made you not have to go back to rehab? And he was asking for his daughter, and I didn't know what to tell him. It was just something that clicked in me. Yes, I have a great support system, and they supported me 100% all the way, and those things are incredibly beneficial. There was a lot of guilt associated with it, looking at what I had done to my family, looking at what I had done to my life, to my friends. I didn't want to do that again. So it was something internal that clicked in me, and I don't know how to make that click for anybody else. You know, there were games that I played too, where when I was living in Philadelphia, one of my roommates suspected something, and I was like, no, you know, I don't have an eating disorder. And he said, well, you know, if you're throwing up after every meal, you need to go talk to a doctor. So he came with me, and I told the doctor, like, oh, I'm throwing up after every meal. And they did a bunch of questions, and they were like, oh, you have this disease. We have to really limit what you can eat. And I mean, that's not the doctor's fault. That was me being incredibly manipulative and trying to get what I want and trying to have control. And even like when I would go to my doctor here in Louisville, when I came back to Louisville, because eventually I had to leave Philadelphia. I couldn't function up there anymore on my own. I called my parents and told them that I had quit my job, and they were pretty much like packing up the car to come up to Philadelphia because they knew something was going on, and they wanted to see me and see what they could do. When I came back, I started seeing a doctor, and, she kept asking, do you think it's an eating disorder? I think you have an eating disorder. And I was like, no. And my mom's emailing her like, it's an eating disorder. I know it is. And of course the doctor, she was like, I don't know what to tell. I can't force her to admit that that's what it is. And I can't really tell you about it because confidentiality, and she's over 18. It's a struggle. And you think that you've got it under control, and even when you know you don't, you still want that aspect of control, and you think you can do it on your own, and you can't. You absolutely can't. I mean, it's even going on a simple diet. Most people don't succeed when they do it by themselves. They have to tell somebody else. They have to have some sort of accountability partner. So if it's something that you're struggling with, find somebody, anybody, because it is so much better now than I ever dreamed it could be back then.
Okay, what was your motivation? You said you came to the point where you realized the light went on and you realized what your motivation was when you were younger up till you started rehab. What was the motivation? What was the cause of your bulimia, anorexia?
I think the cause, what escalated into the eating disorder was this feeling of not being happy with myself. I felt very out of place in school. Did not have a lot of close friends. I desperately, I think, wanted to be a part of the cool kids crowd, but then I also didn't, because I didn't necessarily agree with all the things they were doing or that I thought they were doing. So there was just this constant back and forth tug. I wanted to be better in school, but then I always wouldn't put forth the effort. So there was just this constant battle with myself and always this anxiety. And so the one thing that I could control was my food. It got better in college because I went to college for theater. So suddenly all these things that made me really weird in high school, like liking musicals and wanting the world to break out in a synchronized dance, I was surrounded by people who all wanted that. And we all loved glitter together. So in college, I found more of my niche, and it wasn't as big an issue. And then, I left and I moved out on my own thinking I can do this, and I wasn't ready, and I wasn't able to ask for help. And so it just escalated because I was determined. I was like, no, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to show all those kids in high school, I'm in Philadelphia, I'm living in the big city, and most of them are still in college, and I have my own job and my own house, and no.
I'm going to wrap. I need to wrap things up. Two shocking thoughts here. We believe that God redeems. We think that God takes what is ugly or nasty or bad or destructive and can flip stuff around. And this is a prime example of that. It took guts for Kaet to get up here, to volunteer to come up and talk about this. And
I'm sweating.
Are you?
Yeah, that's why I wore sleeveless.
I could have done without that knowledge. But this is the point, is whatever your history is, God can use that history. So now Kaet's message gets to go out to people, and they get to hear it and say, one, I'm not alone, and two, I can't control this. I need help. And just those two thoughts alone could save lives. And so first off, thank you for what you've done.